The aliens thought it was funny. A species that ruled no star systems, that had no advanced ships, still kept animals beside them in battle. Dogs, they called them. Small, furry, loud. To the alien generals, these pets were a joke. They laughed when they saw one curled up beside a human soldier. They laughed even harder when a dog barked at their armored guards. But the laughter stopped when one of them made the mistake of striking the human. 1 second. That's all it took. 1 second of pain, and everything changed. The dog didn't bark. It snapped. Teeth crushed armor. Speed blurred the cameras. It moved like no beast in their records. And when it was over, the alien soldier's body hit the floor. The dog stood still, chest heaving, blood dripping from its muzzle, eyes fixed on the next target. Suddenly, the aliens weren't laughing anymore. They realized something too late. Humans didn't just own dogs. Dogs chose their humans. And if you ever harmed one, the dog would show you why Earth was never truly alone. In the cold steel corridors of the galactic trade station Zerna, 5, many species gathered to trade, talk, and learn. There were tall insect-like creatures, thin beings made of gas, and even floating crystal mines. But today, something unusual walked among them, a human. Humans were still new to the galaxy. Many aliens didn't know much about them. Some thought they were weak, emotional creatures from a small blue planet. Others thought they were brave warriors. But one thing no one understood was the creature that walked beside the human. It looked nothing like any alien ever seen. It had 4 legs, a furry body, sharp teeth, and glowing brown eyes. Its nose kept sniffing the air, and its tail moved with excitement. It made small barking sounds and stayed close to the human's side. "What is that thing?" one blue-skinned trader asked, laughing. "It looks like food," another alien joked. The human, a woman named Kara, heard them but didn't respond. She gently patted the creature on the head. "Easy, Max," she whispered. The creature, Max, wagged his tail and looked up at her like he understood every word. Zerna, 5 was busy today. Ships landed, deals were made, and species argued over prices. Kara came to the station to meet with a group of scientists. They wanted to study Earth's biology, and she had brought Max as an example of human-animal bonding. But not everyone was curious for good reasons. A group of warriors from the Jernak Empire watched Kara and Max from across the hall. The Jernaks were strong, tall, and known for controlling weak species. They believed only strength mattered. Emotions were a weakness to them. When they saw Max licking Kara's hand and following her around, they laughed loudly. "Is that her protector?" one said. "It's just a dumb beast," another sneered. "If someone attacks her, that thing will just run away." But Max did not look afraid. He looked alert, watching every move around Kara, every sound, every step. His ears stood straight, and his body stayed close to hers. Later that day, Kara entered a research room on level 3. Max stayed near the door, lying down but keeping one eye open. Inside, alien scientists examined samples and asked Kara many questions. But outside the room, trouble was coming. The same Jernak warriors approached. One of them, curious and cruel, reached down to Max and poked him with a metal rod. "Move, beast," the warrior growled. Max growled softly, not loud, just enough to warn. Another Jernak laughed and said, "Let's test what happens if we touch the human." They opened the door and stepped inside. Kara stood by a console, showing a DNA structure on the screen. One Jernak grabbed her arm. "Come with us, little Earth creature," he said with a grin. That's when everything changed. Before Kara could even speak, a blur of fur and teeth flew through the air. Max. He hit the warrior's chest like a missile. His teeth sank into armor. The room filled with loud snarls, screams, and panic. Aliens ran. Scientists ducked. Kara shouted, "Max, stop!" But Max didn't let go. He bit and clawed with pure rage, not for himself, but for her. The second Jernak tried to pull him off. Max turned, blood on his mouth, and barked with such fury that the room shook. Security arrived. Lights flashed red. Max stood in front of Kara, growling, his fur raised like fire. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He was not just a pet. He was her protector, her pack. And every alien watching now understood. This creature, this small Earth animal, would fight to the death if you touched the one he loved. The alien council chamber was silent. 12 species from across the galaxy sat around a glowing table, watching a recording on the central screen. The video had been pulled from a security drone during the incident on Zarn Prime. The footage showed a tall, armored Zarn soldier raising a whip toward a human. The human didn't flinch. But it wasn't the human everyone was focused on. It was the small creature beside him, a brown and white earth dog. A pet. The Zarn soldier had laughed. He called the animal a fluffy snack before raising his whip again. What happened next made the galaxy freeze. The dog moved, faster than anything the Zarn sensors had ever seen. It jumped straight at the soldier's throat. No hesitation. No fear. 1 second, the Zarn was laughing. The next, he was screaming, as the dog tore into his neck with terrifying precision. Blood sprayed the walls. Armor cracked. The soldier fell, dead. The room in the video turned red with alarms. And the little dog stood over the body, growling, tail still. Everyone in the council chamber stared at the pause screen. This creature, said High Commander Lurvek of the Krell Dominion, is not a pet. No, said a quiet voice. It was Grand Archivist Jula of the Zethary. It is something else. A guardian, a younger alien general, blue-skinned, with spiked armor, scoffed. It's just one beast. One lucky strike. We should not overreact. An older ambassador turned to him. You weren't at the labs, were you? Which labs? The ambassador leaned in. The ones where we tried to study them. The room went quiet again. The ambassador continued. We captured 3 of their kind. 1 male, 1 female, 1 small pup. We thought them harmless. We placed them in containment. Gave them food. Watched their behavior. He paused. Then, one day, a scientist walked into the pup's chamber while wearing a uniform that smelled of human blood. The silence turned heavier. What happened? Someone asked. The ambassador closed his eyes. The adult male tore through a titanium gate in 3 seconds. The female followed. They didn't bark. Didn't growl. Just killed. Clean. Silent. A scientist in the corner of the chamber pulled up a hologram. It showed scans of the Earth dog's bite force. This species, she said, has one of the strongest jaw structures relative to size in the known galaxy. But that's not the danger. The real threat is their emotional link to humans. They don't fight for survival. They fight for love. Someone whispered, and vengeance. The footage changed. Now it showed a battlefield. Human soldiers running, pinned down by Zarn artillery. Then the camera zoomed in on a group of 4 dogs, each one carrying gear, armor plates, even small explosives. They weren't running away. They were charging into fire. 2 fell. The others reached the guns and triggered a chain of detonations. The human troops escaped. 1 soldier stopped beside a fallen dog and cried. And as he cried, the dog licked his hand before dying. The chamber lights turned back to normal. No one spoke. Then the High Matron of the Skira Hive said, "This changes things." How? Someone asked. She turned her insect-like head. We laughed at them, called them pets, toys. But we forgot. Earth is a death world. Even their companions are dangerous. And loyal. The young general stood again. So what do we do now? Start shooting every dog we see. Someone near the back muttered. Try that, and you'll see what happens. The commander in charge of Zarn Prime finally spoke. He was pale. I made a mistake, he said quietly. I thought the human was the threat. I didn't realize he wasn't alone. The door to the chamber opened. A human stepped in, unarmed, calm. Beside him walked a single dog, sleek, silent, with glowing eyes and a scar across its snout. The room froze. The dog sat beside the human, tail wagging once. The human smiled. I heard you've been asking questions, he said, about what happens when you hurt one of us. His hand gently touched the dog's head. And what happens when they get angry? No one laughed this time. Not anymore. The alien council laughed. They call it a pet. General Zarn scoffed, watching the small, 4-legged creature stand beside the human again. It's weak. No claws. No armor. It's just soft fur and noise. Across the cold metal floor of the galactic arena, the human stood still, calm, quiet. Beside him, the small Earth dog growled softly, teeth showing. It wasn't a large creature. It didn't look dangerous. But something in its eyes made 1 or 2 aliens hesitate. Scan it again. The Varnak technician said, nervous now. Maybe we missed something. They scanned. The results blinked red. Threat level, unknown. Risk factor, undefined. Impossible, muttered a Zarn commander. This creature is unarmed. No venom, no toxins, no advanced nervous enhancements. It's not even genetically modified. It's just organic fluff. But the dog kept growling. It didn't care about the council, or the weapons, or the hundreds of cameras recording across the galaxy. It cared only about the man standing beside it. Commander Rel, the human who'd survived the siege of Dren, the poison clouds of Vex Minor, and the flame tunnels of Riga 4. And now, he stood, arms folded, with his dog at his feet. Silent. Calm. The judge asked again. Do you wish to defend this creature, Commander Rel? The human nodded once. I don't need to. He'll defend me. The aliens burst into laughter. A Varnak warrior stepped forward. Huge. Horned. Muscles wrapped in shining armor. He smiled as he activated his plasma blade. I'll deal with your pet. The dog barked once. It was not a scared bark. It was a promise. And then, everything changed. The warrior stepped closer, fast, confident. The dog didn't move. Not until the blade hissed near the human. Then it leapt. The small creature launched through the air, a blur of teeth and motion. The Varnak raised his arm, but too late. Crack. The warrior's blade dropped. His arm twisted at a wrong angle. Blood sprayed. Not red, but bright blue. The council gasped. One strike. One bite. And the war-trained Varnak dropped to his knees, screaming. No way. One alien whispered. It broke armor, with its mouth? Technicians shouted. Sensors beeped wildly. New scan result. Threat level, lethal. What is it? Another gasped. Commander Rel smiled faintly. It's a dog. Earth's first protector. You call them pets. We call them family. Security guards surrounded the area. Weapons pointed at the dog. Do not move, a robotic voice ordered. The creature is dangerous. But the dog already had. It stepped back to Rel's side, tail wagging slowly, still alert. And Rel finally spoke. You made a mistake, he said, voice calm but sharp. You didn't study the right part of our species. You looked at our machines, our ships, our soldiers. But not what we love, not what we protect. He looked down at the dog. And you never asked what happens when something tries to hurt the ones we love. The lights above flickered. The council sat frozen. Because this wasn't about war anymore. This was about something far older. Something deeper. Loyalty. Bond. Rage. The kind you cannot measure in weapons or size. The kind only humans, and their dogs, seem to carry. One alien whispered. If this is just one, what else do they keep on Earth? No one answered. They didn't know. But they were starting to understand. The real threat was never the dog. It was the bond between it and the human. And that was something the galaxy was not ready for. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds. The alien camp stood quiet in the forest clearing. Blue fires burned low. Guards patrolled lazily, some laughing, some half asleep. The humans were locked inside force fields, their dog companions caged like animals. They thought they were safe. But they forgot one thing. Dogs remember pain, and they never forget threats to their family. Deep in the forest, something moved. Silent paws pressed against the dirt. Shadows slipped between trees. Not one, not two, but dozens. Some of the dogs had escaped. No one noticed the missing cage door. No one thought animals could open locks. But these weren't ordinary dogs. They were Terran war companions. Specially bred, trained not just to obey, but to understand. They were never just pets. They were family. And when the aliens had struck their owners, the dogs had watched, unable to help. Now, they were coming. A young alien guard named Korik rubbed his eyes, bored. His shift was almost over. He leaned on his staff, glancing toward the cages. Stupid animals, he muttered. He didn't notice the dark shapes behind him. He didn't see the eyes glowing from the trees. Then, a low growl. Korik turned, confused. Hello. Silence. Then, a flash of teeth. The dog moved faster than anything he'd seen before. Korik screamed. More growls followed. Then barking. Then howls. Loud. Terrifying. The camp exploded into chaos. Alien guards shouted. Weapons fired blindly into the trees. But the dogs moved like ghosts, darting, striking, vanishing. One by one, force field controls were ripped apart. One by one, the humans were set free. Inside the main tent, Commander Voro snapped awake. What's happening? He growled. An officer ran in, face pale. The animals, they've escaped. They're attacking. Voro stood, furious. They're just pets. Another explosion rocked the camp. No, sir, the officer said, shaking. There's something else. In another cage, a girl named Maddie held her broken arm. She was only 12. Her golden retriever, Bolt, had been taken from her. She had cried for hours. Now, she heard the sounds outside. She pressed her face to the bars. Suddenly, a shape appeared. Bolt. His fur was singed. His left ear was bleeding, but his eyes were full of fire. He didn't bark. He just walked straight to the lock and began biting it. Maddie, he whimpered. She cried with joy. Bolt, you came. With a snap, the lock broke. The cage opened, and the little girl and her dog were together again. Elsewhere in the camp, the lead alien scientist ran toward the shuttle. We must leave, he shouted. They're organized. A clawed hand grabbed his arm. It was Voro. Stop running, he barked. They're animals. They can't fight us. The scientist's eyes were wild. Then you don't understand Earth. What do you mean? Voro snapped. They call them pets, the scientist said, panting. But they're family, and family fights back. Suddenly, a huge black German shepherd leapt from the shadows. Voro screamed. By dawn, the camp was gone. Fire still burned. Alien tech sparked and hissed. The few survivors limped away, terrified. And in the center of the ruined camp, the humans stood together, their dogs beside them. Not all made it, but many had. The alien army had learned a terrible truth that night. Never hurt a human's dog, because the dog might not be human, but it will come for you, and it will not stop. The alien general stood in the center of the burning field, his golden armor dented and cracked. Behind him, dozens of his soldiers lay broken, some still alive, some very, very not. His clawed hand trembled as he looked toward the smoke, where the sound of growling still echoed. Not from any weapon, not from any machine, but from a creature he had once laughed at. A dog, a human pet, a Terran shepherd, black and silver fur soaked in blood and ash, stood like a statue between the humans and the remaining alien forces. Its glowing eyes were fixed on the general. But it wasn't just the stare that made his bones ache. It was the aura, the pressure in the air, like gravity had grown heavier. What is that thing? One of the surviving officers whispered. It's a dog, the general replied. A human's beast. A toy. But deep inside, he already knew this was no toy. 2 days earlier, the creature had seemed like a joke. The humans had surrendered one of their outer colonies without a fight. They walked out calmly, heads high, and brought along their children and their animals. Tiny cats, loud birds, and of course, dogs. One of the soldiers had kicked one of those dogs, laughed when it yelped, mocked the humans for treating animals like family. That soldier's body was now unrecognizable. That dog had returned. And now, it had changed. The general barked orders. Form a line. Kill the animal. Weapons lit up. Plasma bolts screamed through the smoky air. But the dog was already gone. It moved like lightning. No, faster. 1 second it was standing. The next, it was in them. Claws slashed. Teeth tore. Screams filled the field. Armor meant to stop bullets, and fire cracked like glass. One of the soldiers tried to run. The dog appeared in front of him. Its mouth opened, not just to bite, but to roar. And from its throat came a sound that didn't belong to any beast. It sounded like Earth itself was screaming. Back at the human command post, a woman watched the carnage through a feed. She had red hair, a scar down one cheek, and the insignia of Earth's old defense forces on her shoulder. She said nothing. Beside her, a younger officer whispered, "Do we call it off?" "No," she replied. "They made their choice. We warned them what would happen. But it's just a dog." She turned, her eyes cold and tired. "Just a dog," she said softly. "That's no ordinary pet. That's Titus. The same one from the Sava campaign. The same. Lost his owner in a city blast. Refused to leave the body. Fought for 3 days straight until we pulled him out. Since then, he's been different." Back on the battlefield, the general fell to one knee. His sword was broken. Blood dripped down his face. He looked up and saw the dog, covered in fire and rage, slowly walking toward him. But it wasn't rage in those glowing eyes anymore. It was grief. A sorrow so deep it made the general freeze. He lowered his head. "I didn't know," he whispered. The dog stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Then it turned around and walked away. In the silence, one of the human medics approached the field. She knelt beside the general and looked him in the eye. "We told you. she said gently. You don't touch a human's family. And yes, that includes the dog. The screams didn't come from the battle. They came after. The alien soldiers stood frozen in the steel hallways of their command ship, not because of wounds or weapons, but because of what they had seen, what they could not forget. Captain Velare of the Zarvok Legion had faced human weapons before, the firebombs, the sonic rifles, even the mind-shock grenades. But this was not war. This was madness. She had watched with her own eyes as the human's pet, that Earth creature, the one they called Max, walked calmly through a corridor filled with elite warriors, and none of them came back out. Not a single one. Some screamed. Others clawed at the walls. A few just dropped their weapons and wept. And then silence. Velare had ordered a retreat. But when she tried to give the order, she found her voice stuck in her throat. Because the creature had turned and looked at her. Its eyes were not like the others. Not like the humans. They were ancient. Full of a quiet, burning loyalty. But underneath it, a cold fury that made her claws tremble. She had seen monsters before. But this one was not fighting for blood or power. It was fighting because someone had threatened its owner. And that kind of creature could not be reasoned with. Across the galaxy, war generals watched the footage from the Zarvok ship, shaky, broken clips from helmet cams and drones. What they saw didn't make sense. One soldier fired a plasma cannon directly at the creature. The beam bent around it. Another tried to slash it with a vibroblade. The blade snapped before it touched fur. And one, a brave, massive warrior from the Krull species, tried to crush it under his armored boot. He never got the chance. The beast didn't leap, didn't growl. It simply stepped forward and touched his leg with one paw. The Krull screamed like a child, fell to the floor, and begged for death. He couldn't say why. He just said, "It showed me something. I saw what it could do. I saw what it was willing to do. Not for itself, but for the human." No one laughed anymore. The words Earth Pet were no longer used. Now, it was called something else, whispered in fear. The companion. Back on Earth, the human boy named Jason stood beside the creature, brushing its fur calmly. He was unharmed, smiling, offering it a treat like nothing had happened. A soldier approached him, shaking. Jason looked confused. "Why are you scared?" What is that thing?" the alien asked, voice shaking. Jason tilted his head. "You mean Max?" He nodded. "He's just my dog." "That's not just a dog. That's a living nightmare." Jason smiled. "Only if you hurt someone I love." Scene ends with galactic leaders pausing all attacks on human colonies. Messages flood through the stars. Avoid confrontation with human pets at all costs. Because now they knew. Before their bones would break in war, their minds would break in fear. The battlefield was silent. Alien soldiers stood frozen. Smoke drifted through the sky. Broken machines, fallen warriors, and crushed armor were scattered everywhere. And in the center of it all was a dog. Not a monster, not a weapon, just a dog. Small, covered in blood and ash. Standing beside the wounded human, teeth bared, growling at the generals of a galactic empire. They had come to destroy Earth. They had laughed when they saw humans keeping animals as pets. Now, they stood face to face with the truth. This dog had just torn through their finest soldiers. It had outrun plasma shots, crushed exosuits. Even their combat AI had failed. One of the alien commanders dropped his weapon, eyes wide in horror. "It's just a pet," he whispered. "No," said the human beside the dog, barely breathing, holding his side. "She's family." The dog growled louder. Behind her, hundreds of other humans stepped out of the smoke. Not with tanks, not with fleets, but each one had a dog. Some small, some huge, some calm, some furious. But already, they hadn't brought Earth's armies. They had brought Earth's heart. And now, the aliens had a choice. Surrender, or face the pack.